we go. Okay, so we're now streaming live on YouTube. So welcome everyone to Wisdom Circles. And so I am the host of tonight's Wisdom Circle through Sacred You. So Sacred You has a number of different programs and services that bring women around the world together. And so this is, we're going to be talking about the Wisdom Circles, or the Wisdom Circles is what we're doing today, where we're going to be talking about how to connect with this sacred equinox. So we are moving into that sacred, into the equinox so those of us who are on one side of the world are going into fall, while others are going into spring. And so we're going to be talking about how to bring some of the moon medicine teachings and other practical techniques that we can use to be able to help us create balance during these transitions. So I am Rollie Allaire. Gikido Migwin is my spirit name, which means talking feather woman. And I am from a small community in Northeastern Ontario, Canada. And I am super excited to be here with Samantha and Abby, who I will let them introduce themselves. So Samantha, do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Sam's fine, by the way. I am a mother of an autistic young woman, and we live in a smallish town in central Victoria, which is not far from Melbourne, Australia. Um, I came originally, we both came over from South Africa about 10 years ago. And I've been working with parents and carers of neurodivergent children.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Sam, for being here. And Abby, what
And
about
I've
you?
been through a lot of different transitions, and the coming over to Australia was one of the major transitions in my life. But having a child, even I have just the one daughter, that was also really huge for me. So those are the ones that just come up as the really big ones now.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Sam. And Abby, what about you?
Sure. So I'm Abby Teixeira. Located on Treaty 6 territory, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I'm a speaker, an author, an advocate. I'm also a trauma recovery coach, a feminine business mentor. I help women, femmes of the global majority who are cycle breakers, coaches, creatives, healers, move out of survival and start earning sustainable income without sacrificing their values, mental health, or magic. And best of all, I am a mama of four little ones. The oldest is 7, so that gives you a bit of a time frame of how little they are. And I have navigated many, many, many transitions. I'm a survivor myself and in recovery for almost 11 years now. So lots and lots of transitions. So lots of exciting insights that I'm really excited to share today on this topic.
Beautiful. And I love that. And transitions really is part of our growth and part of our journey that we need to go through as we move through this life. And so I am a grandmother of 2 amazing babies, so 2.5 and 4 months. And we live right here close to the babies. And so I get to see them every single day, which I absolutely love. And I am also I refer to it as a heart grandmother of 3 others. And so Alexis is 10. She's been in our life since she was born. And then we have 2 6-year-olds. They just turned 6, so I had to remember that they're 6. And they are they're children of a young girl who went to school with my son. She's originally from Nunavut. And so she's been in our neck of the woods since she's in grade 3. And she's had the privilege of traveling around the world before babies came into play. And so I have the privilege of being their interim grandmother as well. So I absolutely love that. And so having grown up um, in an addiction house with some domestic violence and gambling and all that crazy stuff. And so having being able to rekindle within my own practices and learning a little bit more about who I am has really helped me grow. And so I love being able to share my knowledge around moon medicine. And moon medicine is a combination of my 25 years experience in mental health, but which also incorporates holistic practices like the lunar energies, crystal healing, energy healing, and all that woo stuff that some people tend to shy away from. But it is part of what it is that I do. And I love being able to share what I know. And one of the things that I am going to urge anyone who is listening is take what you need and leave the rest. And as we move through these conversations. So today we're talking about the transitions that we're moving through right now from a cyclical level of moving into the equinox. And so as I shared, so Sam is actually going through into the spring equinox, and Abby and I are moving into the fall equinox. So we're shifting these patterns. But one of the things in having these conversations with globally with women from around the world is how interesting that it is that we are moving through these cycles of, so in spring, you're moving into new beginnings, moving into the summer in preparation for summer, whereas where we're moving into fall, but moving into that the cycles of where we're supposed to be slowing down into winter. However, both of these seasons are very busy from on our sides of the world. And so we have back to school, we have Christmas holidays coming, and all these different things that are happening where we are, which kind of puts us into where we're supposed to be trying to slow down. We're still in that speeding up. And so we're kind of like in that same energy, which is still a little bit different than Sam is in Australia. So I always think that that's so fascinating in terms of that conversation, because like that's our shift. That's what it is that we have going on. So I see you nodding, Abby. Do you want to share a little bit about what you're thinking?
Yeah, it's funny because I love fall. I love fall. I just feel like it's like a new mini January, just kind of like, we're coming out of the summer and all the busyness, and it feels I feel like a renewal when I'm going into fall, even though everything is kind of shedding all of the trees and all of it and the beauty of that. But I find it very invigorating. I actually prefer fall to goal set, to plan, to maybe even pause briefly and just kind of think back to the year that was and everything that has kind of happened up until now, and then prepare to move into the new year, right? We have 3 more months, and and so, yeah, it's just I feel this really nice renewed energy right now. The mornings are cooler, the evenings are cooler, and then during the day it's still nice and sunny, and be able to enjoy the last little lingerings of summer. But I love that you talk about, cycles and moon medicine. I know that we are literally on the cusp of this big eclipse that's happening, fall equinox, and then also the new moon that's happening this weekend. So there's a lot happening. Like everybody that I've talked to this week has been going through some stuff, and I just keep reminding them, like, well, it's a new moon, and we're also going into an eclipse. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I forgot about the eclipse. Because it does affect us. Especially as women. I feel that we are very guided by the moon, right? Even when we think about our cycles, right? Our menstruation cycles, it's 28 days, right? Like typically, and it follows kind of this moon pattern, and the 4 phases and all of that kind of stuff. And so I really have loved learning about that kind of stuff because it validates, certain experiences that I've had. How when we're going into our monthly bleed, for example, leading up to it, like there's just that kind of tiredness. It's like your body's signaling, it's time to slow down, to rest. And if we go against that, it's not a good idea. Like it's not a good idea. That's when you start hearing, oh, like PMS and like moodiness and all that stuff. And it's because our body's literally telling us like, it's time to rest, to shed, just like winter, is a time to hibernate, to rest, to take it easy, like that slowness. So it's very intelligent in the sense that, Earth knows exactly how to guide us, if we just pay attention and we attune, and it gives us so much answers, so I love this topic so much. So yeah, that's why I was kind of like nodding and smiling, because I was just thinking about all these correlations that I've been making recently and how it's affected me personally in a good way. It's given me a lot of guidance, and that's something that I'm passing down to my daughter. My one daughter, I have one girl, three boys, and I don't shy away to talk to her about these kind of things, and she's just very all ears, like interested. And so yeah, it's really a gift.
Beautiful. And I love how you are able to do this at this stage, because it wasn't knowledge that I had when I was then, right? So for me, so like now as a grandmother, I get to share that with our little people that are coming up. But I really wish that I would have known all the things that I know now that would have actually helped me with my own cycle and the patterns and all the things that were going on during that time. So what about you, Sam?
Well, I'm just thinking about the autistic perspective on the menstrual cycle. That's just what came up for me towards the end of what Abby was sharing, because many autistic girls really, really struggle with the sensory experience of having their period, and actually go onto the pill where there's no breakthrough, consistent pill, or there's no breakthrough bleeding, there's no periods, no periods. And there will be a lot of young women doing this now, particularly autistic women. I know other women do it too, because they don't want that slowdown, in terms of their career. They just want to go, go, go. And like this has been something that has really it's really upset me in the past. It's been so different to my experience, where I consciously decided to basically just I started using the reusable pads, and I gave my blood to the earth, and I found that my periods were very easy. Menopause was actually really, I just sailed through menopause. And I do, obviously some of it was luck and genetics and all that. I mean, I know my mum had a very hard time, but I, I do think it was because I fully embraced it and was actually yeah, giving my blood. So I felt like I was contributing to the earth. I was able to make a contribution. So yeah, all that has come to an end, which I'm not very sad about. But I was just thinking as well, when you were talking about celebrating those monthly cycles. Some I've heard about some rituals, like drinking a little bit of wine, red wine, or some just having a ritual to remember that cycle, because it's not as obvious where, after menopause. So those were the things that came up, and the autistic neurodivergent community is it's obviously something that I'm involved in, and a lot of things that we take for granted are very different from a neurodivergent perspective compared to neurotypical. So it's just nice to be aware of differences, and even transitions themselves really difficult for autistic people, especially when it's unexpected, sudden, and if there's enough preparation, that helps. But like we would all benefit from that, just being more prepared and knowing what's coming up. I've just come back from Mauritius, where I spent 2 weeks, and I wish that I had been prepared for honestly some of the shocks I got from being in a new country. The whole experience was so far out of my comfort zone. Um, so I'm just recovering from that. And what's helped me hugely is just remembering that, it's not the external circumstances that actually determine how we feel. We tend, I don't know, there's a part of the brain that I suppose the conscious, the rational part of the brain tries to find the reason, the external reason. Well, I've got jet lag that affects my hormones. I've been through so much grief in the last year, and that's why I can get stuck in a lot of sadness. But if we go to really look at what's happening in the body and go to the unconscious, and sort of uncover what is the body, what is there, what does it look like, what color is it, and describe exactly what's happening in the body, and then using tools like NLP to change the color, change the size, change the shape of the things that are inside. Using the unconscious, we can shift things from the inside, because that's all we have control over. So that's just been a great reminder of, how much control we actually have. Yes, there's an eclipse and there's, all these things happening, and with the right tools, we can ride all of that out. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, for those who are listening that don't know what NLP is, can you just share what that acronym means?
Well, if it's helpful, it's neuro-linguistic programming, which doesn't really tell you much. I'm really at the beginning of my journey with learning these tools. I've experienced them a lot, but not taught them. So they're tools that do tap into the unconscious, and in a sense, they're very practical ways to deal with something that is very kind of mysterious and mysterious, and the unconscious is, we're like an iceberg. So only the top, what is it, 1/10 or something of the iceberg is above the water. That's like our conscious mind, and that huge part is the unconscious, that huge part of the iceberg that's underwater. So it's working with that, but in a way that's, I think, is very easy to replicate and to use. You don't need years and years of study, and it works. So yeah, but I'd love, if either of you have anything to add about NLP, please. That would maybe help listeners.
So, so one of the things that and I'll come back to the NLP, and then if Abby has anything to add as well, but one of the things that I thought that was really interesting that I would have never ever thought about was the from that autistic perspective of the sensory, right? So like I know that it's sensory based, and I know that there's lots of things around the around the senses that that happen, and that they need to like focus on whatever it is that's happening. But I would have never thought of that from a woman's perspective of going through our cycles, through going through that, because it's like as soon as you said that, I was like, oh yeah, like the cramping and the contractions and the sensations and of the blood letting go and all those things. And I would have never ever thought about that. And so my understanding of NLP, because I've also experienced NLP, but that's not something that I teach. But it really is about that being able to tap into our unconscious level. And so it's one of the many tools that you have that allow you to be able to tap into that connection of being able to change the rhetoric that is actually going on with the words and the things that we say to ourselves or that we've been told over the years, and really be able to shift those patterns and change a lot of that. So thanks for that. So Abby, what about you? Do you have anything
So
else to add to that?
I'll quickly touch on NLP just because I don't have very much to add about that. I've heard of it. I have a few friends of mine who are trained in it. They've got their like master NLP training and all that kind of stuff. And I do know that it's about tapping into the subconscious and, and being able to kind of do work in that way, which is really cool. But yeah, like the whole sensory thing is really interesting. My nephew is on the spectrum, and it's been very interesting to. He's a couple years older than my oldest, and they're all best friends. But it's really interesting to see how he moves in the world, right? And again, they say spectrum because it's such a wide spectrum. Like one person is not the same as the other, and all of that kind of stuff. But even like, I'm very like mindful and I'm watchful of my children and kind of noticing certain things and noticing what one likes, what the other likes, like when it comes to like sensory and noise and all that kind of touch, taste, sound, all of that kind of stuff. And it's really cool. I like being able to have conversations like this because it raises awareness where there wasn't before, right? And also are able to kind of put away certain stigmas and all of that kind of stuff, because it's just lack of information out there, lack of awareness, lack of people talking about it, all of those kind of things, right? So I think it's really, it was cool that you're able to share that and bring that perspective that I myself also never really thought about.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how when we move through these cycles and these transitions and the different things. So like when Sam was talking about the different levels of things, right? Like, so that subconscious mind, and it really brings back to those conversations that I have with myself, but also with clients that talk about how we need to shift the way that we think about things. So like oftentimes I'll hear a client say, well, I need to do this, or I should do that, or it's like, and so a lot of times when we're chatting, my response is often, who says, right? So who says? Who makes those rules? Where does that actually come from? And so is it something really that that you need to, or that you should, or that you could, or whatever it is around that language, is where is it coming from? So if it's coming from yourself, then so that you then need to decide whether or not you keep or discard. But if it's coming from society, or if it's coming from what others have imprinted in our own psyche as to how we're actually wanting to do this, is really important for us to be able to do. And I love the fact that that intergenerational connection that I get to have with people. So I have like little people, I have people that are Abby's age, and Sam and I who are in that next phase, and then I also have access to grandmothers, other grandmothers, and being able to have those perspectives. And one of the things, like when we talk about our moon cycle or our bleed cycle, is that that one of the things that is so taboo is having those conversations. It is natural. Like, so why is it so taboo? Why is it that we have so much difficulty having these conversations? And so I had these conversations with my boys when my boys were little, and as they were growing and moving into the teenagers, because it was so important for them, because I only have the boys. And so, but it was so important for me to be able to make sure that they knew that their role is to be able to support the women in their lives as they're moving through. So if you happen to be at school, especially when they moved into that grade 5, 6 age, um, when the cycles were changing for the girls. And so it's like, okay, so if you happen to notice that they have blood on their seat, or they have blood in the back of their pants, offer them your jacket so that they know that they can be respected, and they can do those things. And I know that my youngest, that was one of the things, an experience had happened to him, that he came home and said, oh mom, like that girl was just so embarrassed. And so then I just gave her my jacket and said, hey, you can wear it for the rest of the day, take it home. And so like I was just so honored and so proud that that he was able to help support her as she was moving through that initial transition, which is to be celebrated. As Abby had said at the beginning, where but it was like, oh my gosh, we can't tell anybody, this is not happening. And being able to go through those phases and those stages allow us to be able to move into that adulthood that actually takes us into that next phase, or that level of our in within our own lives. And historically, women would actually gather during these times to support each other. And so those who were cycling in that moment would actually help, or would actually be there to rest and do the things that they needed to do to replenish. And those who were not cycling would be the ones that would actually support. And then it would be, the roles would be reversed during the other times. And so it's just really interesting that society has put into play that this needs to be so taboo, when it is just something that needs to be discussed, and is so important. And it is that transition, right? So boys, when they get their Adam's apple, it's like, oh my gosh, like this is happening, or look at that, they've got their first facial hair, and like everybody gets so excited about some of these things. Whereas it's like, hey, well, what about the girls? And so I've been fortunate to be able to be around some young girls who we actually have a period party. Like we actually have a gathering where we support them and we celebrate that. And I love being able to do that. And I hope that my children are going to be open to that when my granddaughter gets to that stage, and that we actually get to be able to celebrate in and her moving into that next phase of her life, because it is so important for us to have that. And we talk about like the flow, right? So we talk about how everything kind of comes and goes. And so those of us who have had experience with trauma, that is one of the things that brings about a lot of the challenges. And so that I know for me, I was diagnosed with anxiety at the age of 6. I didn't know until more recently, like into my later years, that I actually was diagnosed with anxiety at that age. But it was based on so like, and again, it's like nurture nature, right? So like, did I get it because my dad had anxiety, my grandmother had anxiety, or did I get it because of all the trauma that I had experienced in my life? And in my case, it was probably a combination of both. And so being able to have that knowledge around behind me allows me to be able to remember, and goes back to what Sam was talking about the iceberg, right? So when people see me, they see me as somebody who's outgoing, do all the things, but I have so much anxiety. Like here I am talking, having these conversations, but I am still that person who's going to walk into the room and I'm going to have like very, very high anxiety. And sometimes depending on the circumstances, I may even avoid going into that space or into that moment, because I still need to work through, although I've worked through a lot of it and I've helped a lot of other women work through it. There are still moments that it's like, oh, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to get through this next level? And that's not just our normal, like that's not just normal worry about how things are going to happen. Like I will actually go into full-blown panic attacks depending on the circumstances, right? So even though I have the tools, I have the knowledge, I just need to remember to be able to bring myself back And these transitions of connecting with equinoxes and allow me to be able to have that strength and that knowledge of being able to bring things back. So, Abby, what about you? Do you have
Yeah,
anything to
you said lots of things there that had me, my ADHD brain, like, oh. I tried writing down a couple things here, but yeah, like I mentioned about how, I'm a cycle breaker in my family, and one of the cycles that I'm really proud that I have broken is the cycle of silence and shame. Growing up, there were a lot of things that were unspoken, a lot of things that we weren't allowed to talk about, we weren't allowed to bring up, and yeah, and like some of these things, like I remember. I got my period, for example, very young, and I was terrified. I remember I was in incredible pain, and I went to my mom, and she didn't know how to handle it. She just like, kind of gave me a pad and told me to put that on, and that was it. That's like the explanation I got, and I was like, like so confused and so terrified. Like, what is happening to me? Like, I remember crawling on the floor because my back was hurting. My low back was in so much pain, and I don't want my daughter to have to go through that. And so, for example, when I was expecting my fourth baby, he's almost two, he'll be two in January. Um, my daughter was very curious. She wanted to like, she was like, oh, like, the baby in there and like asking all these questions and like, how is he going to come out and all this stuff. And so I actually ended up buying this like age appropriate book that it said specifically for the ages like 3 to 6, I think it was 3 to 7, and it was like a picture book, and it explained like about body parts and about like it was just a really brilliant book. And so I read a couple pages every night with her, and then we would have kind of this Q&A discussion. And so when the baby came, I had him at home. I had a free birth with him, and she was the first to come with my mom after he was born, and he was still attached to like my placenta and stuff, and she came, and she had told me before he was born that she wanted to be the one to cut his cord and things like that. And then when she came and like, she saw that, she changed her mind because she was like, oh, there's blood. She's like, what if it's gonna hurt him? I was like, it's not gonna hurt him, like, but she was scared, right? But afterward, she was like, she was so like part of the process. And then afterwards, what happens when you give birth, which is a huge transition, right? Like body, mind, spirit, everything. There's a lot of stuff that your body is like goes through, right, as the mother. And then once again, she would come into the bathroom and ask me questions, and I would just explain to her, like that I grew this baby and it came out, and this is what happens, and mom's belly is going to be swollen like this for a little while, and like, just kind of explaining things to her, because I don't want her to have this like experience of like that these are shameful things to talk about when they are like life things, right? Like, I want her to be able to be confident and knowledgeable and not be fearful, and to be able to come to me when these things are kind of happening for her, and have questions, and for us to have dialogue and things like that, right? And so I love that I'm able to kind of be that for her and for them, and to be able to sorry, one second. No, no, please. No. Sorry, speaking of, this is one of them. Yeah, like I love that I'm able to kind of have those kind of discussions, because I never ever got to have those kind of discussions, growing up. I had so many questions about so many things, and children are so curious. We want to know, like, what's this and what's that and why, and like that was like my favorite question, kind of growing up. One second. No. Stairs, please. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Um, so yeah, so it's just one of those things that I'm just really proud that I'm able to, kind of be that like for them, and have these kind of discussions and things like that. Because life is full of transitions, life is full of changes. And I think that part of the fear that comes when there is a transition, when there is a change, is the fear of not knowing, right? Like the fear of having no idea what this is about, what's going to happen, like all of those kind of things, right? And I think that once we can learn to be curious, to be able to have some sort of explanations, like mind you, not everything has an answer in life, right? There are questions that we might have that we might never know. But for most things, it is a lack of awareness, lack of understanding, and more than anything is like taboo. Certain things are like not meant to be spoken about, and all those kind of things. And I have just really committed to banishing those kind of thoughts that like that, nothing is too taboo to talk about. Let's talk about it. There's nothing to be embarrassed about or ashamed. This is like a natural life process or all that kind of stuff. And more recently, I'm thinking about my second oldest that started kindergarten. And that was a transition for him, from being at home full time to now having to get up and, in the morning and get dressed and go to school and, and have those kind of conversations to the point where he was excited. He's like, he loves it. Like he was so happy, like, when I brought him in, it helps that, his older sister was in school 2 years before that. And he came with me when I volunteer and things like that. So he was like more familiar and things like that. But had I not had the time to like, be excited with him and share with him what you can expect and this is what it's going to look like and this is, these are the kind of the boundaries that you have in the classroom, I think he would have had a much tougher time. But because, he kind of knew what to expect, he got that confidence, right? And so, yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Abby. So what about you, Sam?
Well, I'm just celebrating that you've got this very different approach. Well, both of you, Rollie and Abby, and yeah, I was really looking forward to having that experience with my daughter, and then quickly realized that it was something that she experienced very differently. And well, actually, it took me a while. It took me a while. To realize that, she had a very different experience around menstruation and wanted absolutely nothing to do with it and was terrified, absolutely terrified of it. And to the point where, yeah, it was just causing her so much anxiety. And it's also been something that I've had to make some kind of peace with around me in the society where people are changing their bodies. They're undergoing surgery to change their gender. Um, and they are so, so unhappy in the body that they're in, that they're willing to undergo. To me, surgery is like, there's nothing worse, more scary and more that I don't want than going into a hospital and having surgery. But these people are so desperately unhappy that they're actually willing to undergo major surgery. Women are cutting their breasts off because they have a 50% chance of a particular kind of cancer. They're willingly, before they're even sick, cutting their breasts off. So yeah, all of this is happening in our society, and I want to be able to understand it is so far from to me, my body is sacred. My body is like contains so much wisdom. I trust my body. And yet, so many people have a very, very different experience of being in the body. So I just wanted to mention that. And um yeah, if anyone listening has that experience, that's also something to share and help people like me to understand. Um, the other thing is, in transitions, we can judge ourselves for not having known what was going to happen. Somehow we've got this expectation that I should have known, even though I've never been through this experience before. There can be a lot of shame around, why didn't I know? Why did I make such a poor decision? Why did I let myself get hurt like that? Because simply we didn't know. So that's a thought to be really, really careful about and really aware of what we tell ourselves after going through a transition. and a nice, a way to replace those thoughts is to say something like, wisdom always comes after experience. And the other one is, I just have this, every failure has something to teach me. I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'm not done yet. Because the meaning we give to those experiences is the meaning we give. That's what we live with. Like, something can either be seen as traumatic or a learning experience. And the key the key difference, as I think they've done these studies, is how we are received in community and how we supported after the transition. And I mean, I'm talking about transitions that are, are really difficult. Some are, I guess, some are, and maybe it's about how you support it. Like, if you're going to support your daughter through her first menstruation, Abby, then, that's going to be a very different experience. And having a community support with, as you were saying, Rollie, about, women used to support each other. And in the Jewish community, the Orthodox Jewish community, women have a special place where they go at the end of their period. They go into a special bath, and once they've, had that bath, they can then go back and have, be physical with their husband. But the women will gather there, and together, it's a very, very much a community experience. Everyone knows who's at which part of their cycle. And it's the same with grief. Like, we don't celebrate, we don't support each other. Grief is also one of those kind of taboo subjects. You're supposed to always be upbeat and, outgoing and positive. But yet, if we get together and we have like a mourning circle, for instance, we actually can move that grief and transform it really quickly because we're being held in a group. So when I was in Mauritius, I felt very, very alone and disconnected from my community, and I experienced so much anxiety because of that. So it was just a really good reminder of how important it is to be connected into community. So many people feel isolated, and particularly carers and parents of neurodivergent children, because they're going through something that they think there can be a lot of shame as well, because they're experiencing behaviors that maybe they've never heard of anyone else experiencing, the aggression, violence, and meltdowns and things like that. You think nobody will understand, nobody knows what I'm going through, and that's why, yeah, I'm running a. Um, I don't know if can I talk about this as
Yeah, go ahead.
really?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Monday evenings, Melbourne, Sydney time, I run a group. It's a free offering for parents and carers to come along, and I take them through. It's a way to support each other, a peer support, and it's also learning tools and learning from each other, from the group wisdom, how to manage different aspects of this journey. And we focus on a particular sort of challenge each week, and we share about that. And incredibly supportive for all of us, and just building a community where we feel we don't feel alone anymore. It's just been such a joy to facilitate.
Well, and that is like that in terms of that community, like that is just so important for us to be able to have that. And so you being able to have recognized how difficult that was for you, that you are now able to help provide that support. So you help to facilitate that for other parents who are or caregivers that are actually saying, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. How am I supposed to do this? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my kid? And how do I make this stop? Or how do I, and so still being able to give each other support that way, but just being able to just be held and listened to and supported. And there's nothing worse than feeling like you're alone. And so for a long time, that was one of the things that I had experienced. So I was the eldest of four daughters, and my role was to help care for my sisters, make sure that they were okay. And then I was the eldest grandchild of, my mom was the eldest of 13 kids. And so then I was the eldest grandchild. I have an aunt on my dad's side who is 18 months older than I am. And I have an aunt and an uncle who are both younger than me. And so there's all these differences and all these different things. And so not having that support of because we weren't allowed to talk about what was going on in our family. We weren't allowed to talk about what was happening. And so I was fortunate that I had when I was little, I had a grandparent that I can go to that allowed me to be able to feel supported and connected. And then and then we moved away. Then my parents picked us up and moved us away and took us and isolated us. And so not that that was their intention, but that's what it is that ended up happening. So my grandmother, who lived blocks away, that I could just call her up and say, my Mary, I need to come over, and I would be able to go and hang out with my 18 month old aunt who was older than I was, and then I have a cousin who is a couple of months older than I am, and so the three of us were like the three musketeers that we would all go and we would support each other and be there. And so I know that that made a difference for my aunt, who then felt isolated when we moved away as well. And then my cousin, who she and I went to school together, we did everything together. And so like there's that huge disconnect of not having that support. And so one of the things that I'm huge on is that support and having that connection. And people say, well, do you do one-on-one? It's like, yeah, I do, but I strongly encourage that you actually come and join a group instead, because this is where you're going to get the most support. And then I often hear people say, yeah, but I'm an introvert and I like to be alone and I don't really like to do things with other people. And it's like, okay, but come and give it a shot. Like, come and just be part of the community. And that is where I've seen the most growth of being able to, like, how do we manage and navigate through our emotional dysregulation, right? So how do we work through some of the things that we have going on, because we're feeling isolated and we're feeling alone and we have all these different things. And so and this week is a prime example. I had a client who in one conversation was talking about how challenging it was. And it's like, okay, so let's come back and refocus on in our main group and have this conversation, and let's just brainstorm ideas as to how you can navigate this particular situation. And today I got a message, well, not just we got a message collectively saying that this is what happened and this is how it went. And thanks, because like I wasn't alone after all. I had the support that I needed. And so it's just really important for us to be able to have those connections. So thank you, Sam, for being able to do that and offer that to others. So, and that led very well into kind of where we are in the circle at this point, is like sharing what is it that we do and how do we help and how do we support. So what about you, Abby? So how do you support? What do you do to help people move through these transitions and have these connections?
Yeah. Yes, I'm a firm believer that we heal in community. I healed in community and I continue to heal in community. And as also a fellow introverted extrovert, where I had to go completely out of my comfort zone, when I kind of entered into recovery. And for me, alcohol was a crutch for me for a very long time. It was that liquid courage, right? I was like the life of the party and like all of that kind of stuff. And then when you took that away, suddenly I was like this shell of a person and I was filled with anxiety. Like I would go to places because I would try to meet people and, because with leaving that lifestyle, a lot of those former friends, I kind of left those former friends, right? And I wanted to make new connections and connect with new people that were kind of on the same trajectory as me. But it was hard in the beginning, like really, really hard because I was terrified to like for people to see me, to talk to me. My husband's like a social butterfly, loves to like be in places, and he's a networker, so he would invite me to these gatherings, and I would be clinging on to his arm, like and like nobody talked to me, And it's funny because like when I share that now, because like obviously this is what I do all the time, like I speak and all that kind of stuff, and I'm very, very, very visible. But it's still very uncomfortable for me. But I also know that it's for a greater purpose, and that this like my mission is even greater than me, right? And for me, truly, truly, I'm a community builder. I love building communities. It is something that it just fills me with so much hope and joy, and inspiration, because I just remember early on in my journey how impactful it was for me to get into a room, a circle with people that I had never met before. I didn't know who they were, they didn't know me, but we all understood each other because of the things that we had been through together. And it was so healing. It was like this weight was lifted off my shoulders from a lifetime of thinking that I was the only one that could possibly understand what I've been through. No one has been through the things I've been through, like all of those things. And as soon as I would hear their stories, I was like, like, oh my goodness, like it's not just me, and I just remember how powerful that was. That was actually what planted the seed for me to eventually become a facilitator. Was I saw how these incredible skilled facilitators would navigate these really difficult conversations in such a nurturing, such a gentle, safe way. And it was brilliant. It was brilliant. And it really, I was like, I wish I could do that one day. And interesting story. The first time I became a mom, my daughter, she's a little warrior. She was born not breathing, and so she ended up like having to be whisked away from me immediately, and she ended up in the NICU for the first 2 weeks of her life. And those first 5 days, she was actually in a coma. And so, super terrifying experience as a first-time mom. And afterwards, when she was born, or when she came home, I fell into a deep, dark postpartum depression. Like it was, and I didn't even know that that's what was happening to me until my husband kind of had a mini intervention with me and was like, "What's going on with you? Like you've really just like he was concerned, right?" And so I started like looking for resources, and because I had done those kind of things before. When I faced addiction, I had looked for resources and all that kind of stuff. So I knew kind of, if I needed help, I needed to look for these things. And it was hard. It was hard to come by resources for new moms, battling postpartum depression that were accessible. Like sure enough, like I had coverage through my work to be able to go see a therapist and things like that, but it still fell short. Like I still didn't feel like this. There's just still not. There's something there, right? And what I was really missing was that community component. And so I ended up getting certified, nationally certified, to be a peer support facilitator, to facilitate these kind of gatherings and discussions with new parents who were struggling with perinatal mood disorders. And sure enough, the same experience happening when we would all come together, and everybody was like shy and scared and feeling all this shame, like why am I even here? I should be happy I have this baby, all those thoughts that we have, right? And I would just normalize it for them. And I would share my own experience. And then as soon as like I would open it up, everybody would open up, and then we would all start sharing. And then every week that we would come together, they were a little bit more braver, they were a little bit more, and more open. And then towards the end of the 6 weeks that we would meet, we were all such good friends, and it was just like, and it was something we looked forward to. We would come with the babies on our chest and all that kind of stuff, right? And toddlers running in the background, and and so once again, it was evidence for me that we really truly do heal in community. And so I also hold free monthly gatherings for BIPOC women and femmes, so Black, Indigenous, women of color, where we come together and we talk about our very unique lived experience, right? And ancestral healing and practices and all of that kind of stuff. And same thing, like I'm able to provide this space where these women open up. Like I have a topic, so like I'll have a specific topic. I'll do a little mini teaching in the beginning, for about 15 minutes, and then I open it up to conversation, and then everyone starts sharing their own perspectives. And there's tears, there's laughter, there's joy. Like it fills my heart so much. I love doing those kind of things. And on an individual level, I do that with my clients, where I hold space for them, and then also help them with transformational coaching skills and all that kind of stuff, to uncover certain things that have been blocking them for forever, kind of thing, right? And gain that new awareness. And so, yeah, it's one of those things that is, it lights me up. I love those kind of things. And the last thing I wanted to touch on is that I know it was touched on here about grief. Grief is one of those experiences, human experiences, that I have not met a single person that hasn't experienced grief, loss of some sort. And it is in Western, society, it's definitely very taboo, right? Like it is not something that people talk about very much, like loss and grief, and if they do, it's like you're expected to have like a timeline of when you're going to be done grieving. And then it's like, oh, you're not over this yet, when like certain things, like what I've learned in my own experience is that grief comes in waves. It's always going to be with me, because they say that with grief, the reason why we grieve is because there was great love right there that we lost. And that when we lose whatever that is, whether it's a loss in physical form of somebody, whether it's grieving a relationship, whether it's grieving a job, so many different things that we can grieve. There will always be this little kind of void, if you will, and things that will remind you, and the grief can come right back at you, like hit you like a wave. And in those times, sometimes, even I've caught myself where it's like, why, I should be over this already. Like, why does this still make me cry? Like those kind of things, right? But it's like, no, now that I've learned to like really embrace it and realize that this is going to be like a part of me, I'm able to experience it in such a more gentle, more loving, more compassionate way, and there's no shame in it, right? And so, and the best thing to do is when you grieve in community, like it really is. Like I just think about our ancestors when they used to gather together, and they would have these like ceremonies of grief, where they would wail and sob and stomp and like do all these things, and nobody was pointing, nobody was like, everybody was holding space for each other as they grieve these very real losses. And we've lost that, like we've really lost that. And so it's one of those things that I am wanting to normalize again, you know, and I do, really validate, the people that come into my life when they're experiencing grief and loss and all those kind of things, that, you're not abnormal, this is very normal for you to be experiencing this. There is no timeline, like allow for it to come and go as it comes, and just know that you're not alone in this. And when it does happen, you have people to lean on, right, that you can talk to and all of that kind of stuff. And so it's been like really, really big full circle moments for me.
And I love that, because like that is just so important for us to be able to have that. And I love how you both touched on that grief part, and because this is part of these cycles, right? So as we're moving through these transitions, as we're moving through these cycles, we have these losses, we have these things that we that were once there that are no longer. And so, and I love how you actually pointed out, because a lot of times people do not associate the loss of a job, the loss of a partner, the loss of, and I mean loss of a relationship and a partnership, right? So what death is one thing, but I remember when I was experiencing the loss of relationship with my sister, who is still living, that I had to, and then I would see her in community, or somebody would ask about her, and then all these things would just come back up again. And it's like, she's alive, she's not gone. And but yet while we were going through that transition or that difficulty, it was like really difficult for me to be able to get through. And then there's those 5 stages of anger, right? So like you have those 5 stages of grief that you're going through, and it's like those things would just keep coming back and welling up. And so like this is perfect in terms of these conversations around this transition and the equinox and how things are going to shift. And so it's that reminder of there's so many tools that we can actually use, and we take what we need and we leave the rest. And each time we bring a little bit more to whatever it is that we need in that moment. And so all of these things have these cycles, and they come back and everything. And so having worked in mental health for such a long time, that was one of the things that I would hear from clients all the time. It's like, I thought I put that to bed. Yep, you did. But now there's a new layer of this onion that you need to peel off, and you need to deal with, and you need to, and as you're shedding that layer, there's going to be the tears, there's going to be the grief, there's going to be the anger, there's going to be all these things that come with it. And it's just really important for us to be able to do that. And so so I want to thank you both for joining me on this conversation and on this discussion, because it is so important for us to be able to have this ability of having these conversations and having these hard conversations, but also bringing things to light that we often just kind of brush under the rug, right? We don't want to cry in front of others. We don't want other people to know that we're having a hard time. And especially for those of us who have been those caretakers, that have been looking through all the things that we need to be doing, that have gone through the transitions. And so it's just really important for us to be able to remember our strength, and we have strength in numbers. So I think that was like the biggest message I think that we got out of this conversation tonight, is that it's like we're stronger together. And so and women are there to be able to help lift each other up. And it's not about competition. It's about being able to support each other. Even if you guys are doing the exact same thing, it's not about competition. It's about supporting each other, and how can I help you move through? And that's one of the things that I really like around Sacred You and these conversations, and having this community. And I love being able to be part of this community. And so so with that, I want to remind everybody who's listening that in the description of wherever it is that you are listening to this, there are links for you to be able to get a hold of Sam and Abby and myself. And so there's no, so if somebody, you want to be able to reach out to one of them to connect, then please do so. And for those of you who are not members of Sacred You and are catching this replay, I would like to invite you to join Sacred You. And it is Sacred You with a U .love /join. I think it's just join, but again, that'll be in the link in the description somewhere. And so, but come and join for free. So like you actually get to, I think it's like 7 days that you actually get to come and check out the tribes and check out the conversations and be part of that. So I host on Friday evenings or Saturday mornings, depending on where you are. I host a moon medicine circle that I do every once a week. And so I invite you to be able to come and join us, as well as I have my own programs. So like if there's something that you're interested in terms of having those further conversations and navigating through anxiety and not being alone, I'm definitely here to be able to help support you with that as well. Sam, is there anything, so you have a tribe as well that you host through Sacred You, I believe, right?
I host the Spiritual Entrepreneurs Exchange, where you can bring whatever whatever challenges you're having as an entrepreneur, and see what support is available in the group, or just get ideas. And also I'm hosting a wisdom circle in, I think it's 4 days, your Wednesday evening. And that is, we're going to be exploring the story of the handless maiden. So it's about myths and stories to nourish the wild woman. And the handless maiden story really is, there are a lot of transitions in that story, and it's like a map of how to negotiate life and transitions for a woman. So I'm really looking forward to that and hope you'll join me there.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Sam. And I'm going to assume that Christ May is going to come back in and send us away, whisk us away. And because Sophia's on holidays, because normally Sophia actually is our host. And so, or she comes in and does the introduction part. So I really hope that I served her well. So Sophia, if you're listening, I really hope that I did okay. But yes, I've definitely loved having this conversation. And as Christ May comes back in, we'll have her end the recording. And so, but since we still have, oh, there she is, I think. I was gonna say I was kind of stalling for time because I wasn't sure where she was. So so on that note, we're going to say goodnight and hope you join Sam on her next wisdom cycle. And Abby, thanks again for coming in. This is the second time I've had the pleasure of being able to have conversations with you, and looking forward to more. And Sam, as always, love having conversations with you. So Christ May, thank you so much for supporting